So as the clock ticks down to the president's big announcement on the next Supreme Court justice nominee, my next guest was once mentioned as a possible candidate for the nation's highest court. And here's what he said when asked about it.
What an awesome job. But I think, unfortunately, the way politics is now, once you have been associated with the political process, it's really hard to wash that off. It would take a long time. And I mean, I love the law. I love it much more than I ever loved politics. I love it, but I'm also not naive. If something changes in 10 years and a president called me, I would say, let me come help you come up with a list of people that would be really good, but don't put me on the list.
Here now, House Oversight Committee Chairman Trey Gowdy. Good to see you this evening, sir. Thank you for being here. You still feel that way? And what do you think about this process when you look at how political it has become?
Sad. I remember going home on lunch breaks to watch the confirmation process for other Supreme Court justices. I mean, that's how much of a nerd I am when it comes to these things. It's like the Super Bowl for me. I love the interaction between the senators and these really, really intelligent folks. But it's become so politicized. I mean, how many Democrats voted for Neil Gorsuch? 3? Ruth Bader Ginsburg won 95 to single digits. So the Democrats just have a different rule when it comes to Republican nominees. And, you know, Gorsuch should have won overwhelmingly. But it was, what, 10-vote margin?
54 to 45. You can almost see that number. And Kennedy was 97 to 0. So you can see that number just getting tighter and tighter as you go through this process. And it's very easy to imagine that this person could win or lose by 1 vote.
Particularly if Rand Paul is already announced, which just, I mean, I like Rand, but that just befuddles me why you would play into the Democrat playbook by already announcing who you're going to vote against.
Well, he voted against her in the last round, you know, just to clarify. He voted against her when she was up for the circuit court.
Hopefully something has changed, but what it really does when it's this tight, when it's 51-49 or 50-49, if somebody's in poor health, it makes every one of those 100 senators the decision maker. And that is just, I mean, can you imagine a more miserable existence than having those 100 bosses get to dictate what you do? So I feel sorry for the president, although this is the most important thing. We have gotten it wrong 5 different times that I can think of. Republican presidents nominating 5 folks, whether it is Blackmun, whether it's Brennan, whether it is Warren, whether it is Souter, whether it's John Paul Stevens, those are all Republican nominees that shocked us with their liberalism. You can't think of a single Democrat nominee that shocked you with his or her conservatism. So President Trump's first obligation is to not get it wrong like several of his predecessors did.
I mean, the buzz is that it's not Amy Coney Barrett. We could all be surprised and she could walk into the room tonight. We just don't know. But this exchange with Dianne Feinstein, Senator Feinstein, really disturbs a lot of people because it goes to the heart of whether or not you're allowed to be a religious person in the United States of America and sit on the Supreme Court. Watch this.
When you read your speeches, the conclusion one draws is that the dogma lives loudly within you. And that's of concern.
What do you think about that?
I think it is despicable, and I think if a Republican had said that, that person would have been vilified. First of all, I wouldn't want a religious faith structure that didn't influence every part of your life. On the other hand, the best judges have the humility and the restraint to follow the law. You are talking to someone whose religious views are very different on the death penalty than the fact that I had to seek it 7 times as the district attorney. So the ability to separate what you believe from a theological standpoint from actually doing your job, I think it's terrible that Dianne Feinstein asked that question, and she would not have asked it of a non-Christian. I can guarantee you that.
It's hard to imagine that she would have challenged someone on their Jewish faith or their Muslim faith in the same way, saying that, you know, they were clearly steeped in the dogma of either one of those religions. It was quite a moment. Thank you so much, Trey Gowdy. Always good to see you, sir. Thanks for being here tonight.
You too. Thank you.
All right, big news night tonight. Judge Brett Kavanaugh has now been nominated by President Trump to the U.S. Supreme Court. By the way, Sarah Sanders just told reporters that the White House expects him to be confirmed by October the 1st. Joining us now, more reaction, Fox News contributor Sebastian Gorka. This book up there, The Russia Hoax, is out in 2 weeks. That's right, the illicit scheme to clear Hillary Clinton and frame Donald Trump. I'm proud of you for that. All right, real quick, let's get your reaction and the fear-mongering that's already begun, and it would have been for any nominee of the president.
Dick Durbin led the smear campaign against Kavanaugh 12 years ago, calling Kavanaugh the Forrest Gump of Republican politics, which only underscores how obtuse and partisan Durbin is. It didn't work then. It's not going to work now. And the left is already conjuring up the hysteria, claiming that this means abortion will be outlawed in America. That's simply untrue, even if you overturn Roe v. Wade, and I doubt that happens. But if it does, that means the decision reverts back to the states.
What
and
I read on
original,
that's such an important point, by the way, because New York, New Jersey, 45, 6, 7, 8 states are not going to, they might have different views on it, different restrictions, first 3 months. Right. Parental consent, all sorts, but there are going to be very liberal states. It does not mean that abortion is going to be outlawed.
It's a lie perpetuated by
the left, and that's all true. Let me ask a political question, Dr. Gorka. This now, if again the White House says they expect him confirmed by October 1st, leading into this very important midterm election, that does mean a couple of things, not the least of which red state Senate Democrats, Manchin, Claire McCaskill, Heidi Heitkamp, Bill Nelson. They've got themselves one really tough decision to make. Dick Durbin is telling them, oh, risk your entire political career. And he said it before the nomination was even announced.
Yes, look, the reaction already, Greg's absolutely right, is all you need to know about Kavanaugh. The fact that the DNC has already stated that this man shouldn't be anywhere close to the Supreme Court. The fact that Chuck Schumer has just announced that he will use every weapon in his arsenal to stop this nomination.
He said that last week before he was nominated, so that's shocker.
Right. So this tells you that this is the right man for the job, but it tells you that November is going to be very, very tough for the Democrats. I just want to make sure the White House is listening. Bill Shine, this is going to be a very important communications message because this is going to be worse than Bork. I give you the prediction now. They will use every dirty trick in the book to block this nomination, but we can't get it through.
I played Ted Kennedy with Robert Bork. It was despicable what that Mr. Chappaquiddick said. It was a disgrace to the U.S. Senate. And then what they did to Clarence Thomas was a disgrace to the U.S. Senate.
Absolutely.
But it's going to happen.
Sure.
I've been saying this for weeks. It's predictable.
And it doesn't matter who President Trump would have nominated. The same smears would have occurred. But I admire President Trump. He had the courage to make the right choice, notwithstanding the fact that he could have chosen somebody who would have been an easier confirmation. But no, he made an important choice, the right choice, a brilliant jurist. There's no question.
What I read to you about what his judicial philosophy, what he said.
He's a textualist when it comes to statutes, an originalist when it comes to the Constitution. He is young. He'll be on the court for a long time.
No doubt, Greg Jarrett.
No doubt whatsoever. 300 opinions plus. Prove it.
Yeah. Okay. So this is why I keep saying, Dr. Gorka, we have less than a minute. This 2018 midterm election is the most important in our lifetime. All those Senate seats that could change hands and become Republican, the Republicans have a very slim margin, and that means Rand Paul, Ted Cruz. That means Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski. In that sense, did the president make the right call?
I think he did. I think he absolutely did. You heard the 2 sentences he made in the East Room. He said, I do not believe in legislation. I believe that we interpret the law, we don't legislate it, and the Constitution is to be interpreted, not amended. That tells you everything we need to know, but 2018 is even more important than 2016, Sean.
You know, as Judge Scalia once famously said, a good judge will make many considerations as the law demands that they may dislike.
The left is already in full resistance mode over Judge Kavanaugh. Left-wing agitators and politicians began protesting his nomination in front of the Supreme Court almost as soon as President Trump made the announcement.
We must ensure that we defeat Brett Kavanaugh. All our rights are at stake.
He is a dangerous man who will endanger our fundamental freedoms.
This just must not become the next justice on the Supreme Court. And what that will take is all of us fighting as hard and as long as we can.
We won't stand for any nominee, no Brett Kavanaugh, that wants to take away our constitutional rights.
Hell no on Kavanaugh! Hell no on Kavanaugh!
They must have had a lot of different signs. Hell no Coney Barrett, hell no Hardiman, but they had to put up the Kavanaugh sign. Well, the left-wing Center for American Progress put together tonight's protest. Joining me now for reaction, Chris Hahn, former advisor to Senate Majority Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, Harmeet Dillon, the RNC committee woman in California, and Matthew Lemke, an attorney in Alabama who previously clerked for Justice Kennedy. Has been following this very closely. It's great to have all of you on tonight. Matt, let's start with you. Justice Kennedy, for whom you clerked, I'm wondering what he's thinking tonight. He's probably over the moon. But that association with both Justice Kennedy and the Bushes did give a lot of conservatives, before we get into the resistance, pause about Judge Kavanaugh, whether he'd be the right type of justice, whether he'd evolve in the role. Matt, you know Brett and you know Justice Kennedy. What are your thoughts tonight after watching this all unfold?
Well, I think it's a great night for Justice Kennedy. He's got to be immensely proud that his law clerk has been nominated to the court. It will be his second law clerk on the court if Judge Kavanaugh is confirmed, because, of course, Judge Gorsuch, now Justice Gorsuch, also clerked for Justice Kennedy. But I think in terms of the conservative concerns, look, there's a 12-year record of 300 decisions by Judge Kavanaugh that show that he is a principled conservative who believes in judicial restraint and believes that he's not the 101st senator, some super legislator, but instead he's there to interpret the law. President Trump had 4 great candidates. I think any one of them would have made a terrific nominee, and people had their favorites. But now I think people will rally around, all conservatives will rally around Judge Kavanaugh, because he really is a principled conservative that we can count on.
Well, except the protesters. And Chris, I mean, that's your party there tonight at the court. I mean, they're kind of straggling around now, but they had all their pre-printed signs up. You had the NARAL people, you had the Planned Parenthood people, you had Center for American Progress. Yeah. I didn't find that display tonight. I mean, as I'm trying to put myself as an outside observer, which is hard given my background clerking on the court and so forth. None of that seemed attractive to me. It seemed in poor form. And it seemed like it doesn't matter who the president nominated. He could have nominated Merrick Garland. They'd probably have a Garland, resist Garland sign up there. Your reaction to what unfolded at the court?
If he would have nominated Garland, I'd be here talking about how great a president Donald Trump was tonight.
Maybe you,
so that
but not this crowd.
Shocking development. But I will say this. Look, Merrick Garland, it all comes back to it. That is what set this up, right? So the left wing of the Democratic Party and the Democratic Party as a whole has no choice but to resist this nominee, regardless of his qualifications, regardless of his background, because they feel like their nominee was stolen by Mitch McConnell 2 years ago. And as a result, we are in for probably the Super Bowl of all Super Bowls of battles in Congress over the next couple of weeks. And I think October 1 is a very aggressive deadline, especially given the fact that he has 300 decisions that people are going to have to wade through and understand. And he's going to get a lot of questions on those. And remember, I heard Mr. Leo talk about the Federalist Papers. My favorite Federalist paper is Federalist 51. Ambition must counteract ambition. And Congress has lacked ambition to counteract this president and check it. So the court's probably the last resort here. So Democrats have to take that into account when they look into this background.
Harmeet, Bernie Sanders was out there in full resistance mode after Judge Kavanaugh's announcement tonight by the president. But Bernie was all hot and bothered. Let's watch.
What we are talking about here is in a moment in American history where we have right-wing extremists controlling the House, the Senate, and the White House. If we appoint another right-wing extremist to the Supreme Court, I have very serious concerns about justice in this country and what will happen to the men, women, and children and the future of our nation.
Harmeet, I think the left is going to try to use this to whip up, votes in the fall. on the midterm election cycle. That's why they want to put this off if they can until after the midterms. I think they're not going to be able to do that. But your reaction, Bernie Sanders is still very popular, fills stadiums, unlike other people who wanted to be president. Your reaction to his comments tonight before the court announcement?
Well, I think it's ironic that this whole thing has occurred because Hillary Clinton rigged the whole Democratic process so that Bernie Sanders couldn't get traction, and now here we are. I mean, you know, as a conservative, I'm very grateful that Donald Trump is now making the second terrific pick. But the reality, Laura, is no matter who had been picked, and remember in the Gorsuch situation, Democrats had these blank signs, and they actually took markers there and they filled in the blanks as to who was the person they're going to be protesting against. I'm sure that was happening today as well in D.C. It doesn't matter who it is. It doesn't matter who it was. It could have been anyone on that list of 25 or even any conservative, and the same hysterical reaction would have been there. I mean, it's an hour later, not even an hour later, and blood is already running in the streets, according to these people. But remember that the same crowd, NARAL, NOW, remember People for the American Way, they said that Justice Souter was going to overturn Roe v. Wade. We have been hearing this. It's not down to Merrick Garland. We've been hearing this hysteria, overreaction, dating back to Bork and before. And each time they got it wrong, and it's the boy who cried wolf.
Yeah,
nobody's taking these people seriously today.
Hold on, Chris. Matt, we got about 15 seconds. Matt, if there's one thing that Brett Kavanaugh could do to sway a Collins and a Murkowski, I mean, do you think they're going to be a problem in this ultimately?
Well, I think he's going to emphasize the importance of stare decisis, the idea that courts should be very hesitant to overturn precedent. And he's going to think about it. That's right, an independent judiciary.
We're out of time.